know that this is a big topic as the governor delivered this information through her State of the State address on Tuesday. The cutting and the regressing of the grocery tax is something that's very important to this administration, to the General Assembly, because it touches the pockets of every one of our constituents back home. However, feel rest assured that the cutting of this is only the state portion and will have no impact on the city and local, the 280 million that you're talking about.
That deserves a much louder applause than that. I'm sure the Speaker Pro Tem would like to say something, the President Pro Tem would like to say something as well.
Well, I thought we had a great negotiating tactic for session to hold that news. And I lose on the ability to hold that news because it was, it's too much money. It's too much of a significant issue. It probably something we should go ahead and say where we were at.
Thank you very much. Yeah, there's a lot of police, firefighters, road crews that all depend on that money, so we appreciate that very much. Let's go to
big side.
Yeah, big side. Let's kind of get to some of the more general things we talked about, and then we'll come back at the end, maybe talk about some affordable housing issues and really, it's, I think, probably better put as worker housing, folks that actually are trying to work and pay for a place to live at the same time. It's not always an easy thing to do. So you all have a variety of public service in your background, a lot of perspectives involved. Over your time in public service, has your perspective with working with cities and towns evolved in any way? And there's some specifics you could share with us in that regard, things that are helpful for them to know and helpful for you to know as well.
Sure. Well, I'll start by saying if I say anything over the next hour that you disagree with, I fully blame my cousin, Julie Rippey from Leslie over here, who treated me poorly when I was growing up. But here's what I've learned. You guys have a really hard job, right? Like I get to drive, 3 hours away from home, do my work here. When someone's mad at me, it's over an email, right? Maybe a text message. But something I've really learned is when people you go to the city council meetings, you're sitting in your office, you're right there, they can drive across the street, and you're having to talk about what's going on face to face versus where we get to do it removed. I've learned to have a lot of respect for how difficult that is and how easy it is for me to be removed from the.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because we've had this discussion several times that if you go to a basketball game or a football game over the weekend, if you go to the grocery store, you go to church, they all run into their constituents. So I appreciate the observation, Mr. Speaker.
Well, certainly, I've had the pleasure and privilege through my career of living in about every size city you can think of. I was born and raised in what I consider the picture perfect small town USA. Up in Woodruff County in McCrory, and population, about give or take 1,500. And so, growing up there, where, as you say, you would see the mayor, you would see those city councilmen because they were local businessmen, they were local business ladies, they were teachers in the school, they held local positions, they were service-minded and service-oriented, and they cared so much about the community that they ran for local office. And so, the accessibility to them was day-to-day, face-to-face, whereas as Senator Hester and I talk about, we don't always come face-to-face with our constituents unless we go to the grocery store, go to the ball game. And then, living in Cabot now, I'm very, very proud of our community, but what I see with our mayor and with our city council is how engaged they are in the community. Yes, they have a role of public service. Yes, they go to their offices every day and do their job, but they are very involved with everything going on in our community, from showing up at sporting events, from showing up at school functions, from Chamber of Commerce. They're everywhere and being seen and being accessible, and I think that transparency and openness is key to having a great relationship with your local leaders.
That's really great to hear. I'm kind of curious what you think about the relationship right now between municipal government in this state and state government, and if there anything could be improved. or if you feel pretty good about it. Just kind of curious what your thoughts are.
Well, I think relationships are, it's complicated and not complicated, right? Like the more you see somebody, the more you talk with them, the more you text with them, the harder it is to be at odds with them, right? And I think there are natural rubs. I think they're healthy rubs, right? I think there's natural rubs between the state and Fed, between the state and municipal, between municipal and the counties, right? And we will experience all those. I don't think that's bad. Right? I think we think differently. We have different responsibilities. We have different constituencies. I think the ability to communicate with each other and constant communication is the key. Like I don't shy away from something, and we'll talk about that a little more, that I consider a difficult conversation, but I think it's an appropriate conversation. And when you live in a democracy, you're going to have natural rubs.
Speaker, anything else?
Well, I think good open communication and relationship building is the key to anything, whether it's in government or business. You know, I tell my staff back at my company that, you know, they have to work every day building upon that relationship with our clients. It needs to be a relationship on a first name basis. You lose something in that relationship with an email. I think you lose something in that relationship with a text message, but when you have that natural face-to-face contact, or at the least that contact over the phone, and you're on a first-name basis, even in a situation, as Senator Hester says, that maybe you disagree upon, you're able to disagree upon the issue, but yet maintain the relationship out of respect because you have that mutual relationship with one another.
Let's switch gears here and talk about, I think, what is the new hottest commodity. It's no longer oil, it's water. And it is literally the lifeblood of a state and each community within that state. The estimates are, roughly speaking, that water infrastructure needs around $9 billion worth of work. Unfortunately, it's not just in one area. It is across the board, and it's everything from Northwest Arkansas, where you're from, where they're running out of capacity both for water and wastewater, and then failing infrastructure in many of our smaller communities, both east and south in Arkansas, and central Arkansas as well. So I'm curious what your thought processes are. If you could give us any sort of insight, what conversations are going on with the governor's office, the NRC, what cities and towns can look forward to, what not to look forward to. So any insight you might have would be very helpful on that subject.
Well, yeah, there's certainly $9 billion, if not more, of infrastructure needs. I'll start off with this. The state of Arkansas has not run out of grant money like we have in the last few years. There's no foreseeable thought that we would run out of grant money with ANRC. If you have a need, make an ask. Reach out to your state representative, reach out to your state senator, and if they don't know, they know who to go ask to help figure it out. But there is money. We are not asking for it. It's a revolving federal fund, right? And we add more to it all the time, and monies are coming back. So we are not close to running out of low interest loans.
Right.
Low interest loans. But there is monies available there. And if you run into a situation where there's some matching or some conflict, let your local legislator, let them know what the concern is. Look, I recognize that. I think one of the responsible roles of government, I think defense, I think providing basic utilities is a role of ours. I think we've got to spend a lot of time, effort, energy, and focus on getting that right.
Yeah, saying that water is the new gold. I mean, that's spot on. And growing up as a kid in rural Arkansas, I remember when we first hooked on to a rural water association. And I thought that was the absolute best tasting water imaginable. Growing up with a well, having to buy the the chemicals to put on that just to make it so you can stand to smell it or drink it or use it. I remember that very vividly. And getting real water to our home was incredible. And most recently, I'm starting to see photos from friends and families back home who, when the water comes out of that tap, it's copper. It looks like a copper liquid, and they can't drink it, they can't cook with it, they can't wash their clothes in it. There are water systems failing all over the state. My father-in-law, in our town growing, my father-in-law was the water superintendent, utility superintendent there for years. And I remember him sharing with me how water, and this was 20 years ago, water had become very political. I said, what do you mean by that? And he said, because there's water systems failing all over the state. The infrastructure is going bad. And he said, the last thing that a mayor is going to do, especially close to an election season, is raise water rates. It's not going to happen. So there was a political aspect to it. We'll make it another year. We'll make it another election cycle. We're just not going to raise rates because it's going to affect people's households. And because of that, because we kind of kicked that can down the road for a long time, this is the situation that we're faced in. Senator Hester and I actually had a meeting earlier today talking about this subject. I believe the number was that we have put $3 billion from the state in the last year has gone into helping water systems across the state. It's a key priority for us, and I think that we'll see continuous movement in that in the session.
I'll add something else. I'm glad the speaker pointed on that. You know, look, I'm the leader of the no tax crowd, right? Anti-taxer, don't raise taxes. But here's the reality. If you are not charging enough for your water to maintain the water systems, you've got to increase your water rates. Nobody wants to increase water rates. Also, nobody wants brown water. Right? Like a government doesn't function. I mean, I've said this quote many times, like you can control the waves of the ocean, but if you can't flush the toilet and the spigot don't turn on, you're a failed government. Right? I think we have to have hard conversations, and we passed a law a couple sessions ago that require
I was just getting ready to mention it.
All right, well, now shut up.
No, I'm glad you mentioned it. That law was out of a variety of hard-fought issues and battles over time, but more importantly, ultimately, as you said, difficult conversations turned into a very productive conversation. And that law still needs some tweaking. We're all engaged in it. We're all supportive of it. It requires the study of water rates. It requires looking at the ability to join with other systems to get a better system overall. All of those kinds of studies. I'm glad you mentioned it. I was just going to say, do you think that's going to make a difference, or has it already begun to?
Well, I think so. I think, look, it's easier for somebody to raise rates when they can blame it on the state, right? Like, and that's okay, right? So, like, you have to charge enough to cover for the water. And look, I recognize, there are systems in the state of Arkansas that are losing more water than they're selling. We've got to do something. About 4 or 5 months ago, Governor, I get a list of, hey, we're about to award all these grants. I look on there, it's 0 in Benton County. So call up the governor's office. I'm like, hey, like, I'm pretty easy to get along with, but there's like 27 names on here. One could be from Benton County. And their response was like, well, hey, guess what? Everyone in Benton County has clean water. I'm like, okay, fair enough. Next round is us. And I hear we got a bunch yesterday. So I don't know.
That's awesome. All right. I don't know if you want to comment on that or not.
I was just thinking about the priority of water with this General Assembly. 4 years ago, I was in Washington, was visiting with Congressman Rick Crawford. We were talking about some security issues. It was kind of at the real spawning that we were beginning to see a lot of the crypto mine issues in the state, some cybersecurity issues. We were visiting with him about it, and I said, Congressman Crawford, what keeps you up at night? And he said, Brian, when I first got into Congress, he said, nothing kept me up at night because what you don't know, you don't know. But he said, I can tell you now what keeps me up at night is water. And I thought for sure he was going to say cybersecurity or influence of some communist country, or because he's very involved with house security intelligence. And I said, water? And he said, if the state of Arkansas does not get proactive beginning today with the water issues that you're facing, he said, when your town or your municipality or your county can't turn the water on and have clean drinking water and be able to process wastewater, he said, you're going to have a major crisis in the state. And he was right.
Let's switch gears again. We probably could talk about water for the next 6 hours with all the questions and concerns in this room, but let's talk about highway funding and education. Those two things continue to be driving forces in this state for policy and money issues. And they're different in different parts of the state, depending on where you are, what your school system's like, or what your roads or highway system's like. So in your positions, how is that approach, recognizing that there are these different patterns? How do you approach that to try to get the best result possible?
Well, I'll speak on roads. So for the last 30 years, I've been in the supply chain management logistics business. We facilitate transportation of freight all over the United States, Canada, and Mexico. And when we talk to companies about freight moving in and out of the state of Arkansas, the topic of the condition of our roads always comes up. Well, we can always tell when we leave Texas and enter Arkansas. We can always tell when we leave Arkansas and enter Missouri. But I will say that I believe I believe it was issue 1 back a few sessions ago with some additional funding. We're starting to see, if you sit down and you go to RDOT's website and you look at all the hundreds and hundreds of miles of projects that's going on across the state, it's not happening as fast as we would like it. I've lived in Cabot for 23 years now, and I believe that from Cabot to North Little Rock has been under construction for 23 years. And so my hope and dream that someday we're going to be able to just get out here and feel like we're driving on velvet anywhere in the state is a real dream. I just don't know if that's a reality in my lifetime. But I do believe we're seeing significant progress at the state level. I get a lot of phone calls about bad roads, but it's usually not state highways. And so I do believe we are making a difference with our state highway funding.
It's good. I've talked a little bit about natural rubs. So we don't feel like we are getting our bang for the buck on highway money, right? We're hearing from contractors we're getting bad plans, or we can't get the roads built because the utilities won't get out of the way, or whatever it is. So we've been pushing back a little bit. We've had some really uncomfortable meetings between utilities and RDOT. Turns out that everybody's probably wrong and everybody's probably right, like things normally are. But we are pushing back in that area. I want you to know that we recognize that we're working to fix those. We're really, we really feel good about Jared Wiley taking over. I'm feeling really good about that. And look, I'll tell you another thing. We're really proud of Mayor Orman in Bentonville, and she's doing a great job. And but look, I visited with her a year ago or so, but people are mad because it's traffic. It's getting bad. Now they're complaining because there's orange barrels everywhere, right? This street shut down, orange barrels over here. And I remember thinking, I'm glad she's got her job and I've got mine. I'm getting no calls about orange barrels.
Right. Yeah, we'll get back to her position right now that you helped her with. It's been a great program, but let's kind of get to a couple of quick things on current key priorities that the legislature may have that might directly affect cities and towns. Is there anything you could share with us?
So we've had some discussions. I just had a meeting today earlier with our budget director from the Senate, Jonathan Dismaying, about some economic development districts, and those may be some unique opportunities where a city can carve out a street or a block or a building and just determine absolute economic value there, as far as they can tax more, they can tax less, and just try unique opportunities, right? Like I think of anything in this world, we live in a society that requires choices now. You're probably experiencing that in government, but people want options and choices. And if I'm a developer coming to your area, I don't like to be told this is it, right? They like to be told you got lots of options here. So that's a tool that we're going to look at that I hope if Jonathan Dismay's leading it, it's probably going to happen, and it'll probably be done well, and I hope it works well.
Yeah, I think if you've seen any write-ups or been to any panels that I've been on over the last several months, the topic that I think is going to be very important to us, this General Assembly, if you picked up the paper or looked at a blog or any news station lately, we talk about maternal health and mental health. And you may think, well, what does that have to do with city and local government? Well, I think it has a lot to do. We have to have some type of generational change when it comes to healthcare in our local communities. And I told a group earlier today, it really burdens me every time that I see a labor and delivery facility across the state of Arkansas that's closing down. Why? Because that makes it harder for healthcare for that expecting mother and that child that's about to be born. And when that happens, that regresses positive healthcare in your communities because they're having to drive farther for better healthcare, or they're just not doing it at all. And then if I asked for a show of hands, I believe it would be overwhelming within this group if I said, if you know somebody in your family, someone on your block, someone in your church group, someone in your social circle who's experiencing some type of mental health problems, behavioral health problems, raise your hand. And I believe if I asked you to do that, it would be overwhelmingly in this crowd the number of people that know somebody. And it didn't used to be that way. Used to, when we talked about mental health problems, typically in our minds, we were thinking about seniors or veterans. And we didn't talk a lot about it because we knew it was something negative with our veterans who we have the greatest respect for, so we just didn't talk about it. But we're seeing mental health and behavioral health problems all the way down into our elementary schools now. And so what does that mean? That means that we've got families that are being further disrupted from normal healthy family lifestyles, and that affects workforce because it becomes a dysfunctional family. And so workforce is a key to us in this coming session to address the needs of economic development and growth in your cities, providing workforce for all the different services that you have. But if we don't back that up with some serious issues with healthcare, maternal health, and mental health, then they're just going to counteract one another.
That's an issue very near and dear to my heart for some of the things my family has gone through. And so mental health issues are the root of many problems, including addiction levels and a variety of other things that stem from it. And the stigma over the years has been terrible. So the fact that we're now able to have a conversation about it and then actually put some solutions in place is, I think, enormous for this state. We're working with law enforcement to try to do some of that now, given and frankly, all public safety people. So, bravo, thank you. That's a wonderful thing to hear. We're started now. You guys are in the race till April, or hopefully sooner, probably from your perspective, hopefully sooner. Let's talk a little bit about the best way for these folks to communicate with their legislator, the best times to do it, and how to do it. I would be very curious to hear your input on that. You sort of mentioned it earlier, the more conversations that are had, the better off it is. And so I'd be curious how that transpires from your perspective.
Well, if you don't, as Senator Hester mentioned, if you have a need, reach out to your state representative, your state senator. If you don't know, if you're in city government and you do not know them on a first name basis, you need to do that. Do not let your first point of contact to your elected official be in a point of crisis. And I think I can see the reverse side of that. You would want the same thing with the people that you represent back in your cities. Don't just call me at a time of crisis. Let's build that relationship so that we can work together to solve problems. We're very fortunate in the House with the diversity of our representation. A lot of times people kind of get lost in the fact that there's 100 members of the House, and you see that there is kind of a sense of, I call it almost inequality. Yes, we are 100 members. Yes, we're all elected by 31,000 people. Yes, we all have one equal vote. Yes, when we all show up, the men are in their suits and ties, and the ladies are in their dress apparel, and there's this sense of equality. But the reality of that is that we are a very unequal, diverse population within the House. Because what it means for me to serve the city of Cabot is not the same thing as it is for Representative Bart to serve Horatio, or the same thing for Senator Hester to serve Bentonville. our roles are very different based upon the diversity of our populations. But in the House, what we're blessed with is that we have 3 former mayors that serve in the House. We have 5 former city council members. I think we have 15 members who have been in some other form of city or local government. So a great state starts with great cities, and that starts with great local government. And so just knowing the Municipal League, of having those folks in our population and being able to represent you with the diversity of the body that we have, having that close relationship is just a bonus.
Well, no, I'll add on. So for me, and I think for most members would say text messages. Emails are good. I think in the last 7 days I'm 800 behind. So like I will scroll through them, but like text messages are really good and very, very specific. Like Mark and John Wilkerson may not want me to say this, but like if every time they tell you to email me, if I'm getting 90 email or text, right, like it becomes white noise, right? But I would say if Mayor Noblett says, Senator Hester, this is important to Cave Springs for this reason, okay, that matters to me. If he says the Municipal League said to tell you vote no on this, I'm like, I mean, it matters, but it really matters when he says this matters to your local community for this reason.
Thank you. And so what that translates to is when we send you things, read it. There's a reason we send you material specific to your area. So please read it so you can have that conversation. Would you suggest when this is a hard thing for me because we all guard our time and our time with our family and our private time where it's really sacred to us. But on weekends and those kinds of things, when you're home, is there a good or a better time in which to contact you to have a more in-depth conversation? Or is that just like, please don't do that. I need my sanity for 2 days.
I feel like, and my family knows, we signed up for this. We begged the people for this job. They gave it to us. We're in session for 100 days. I'm here for it. I don't answer my phone for 3 or 4 hours on Sunday morning. We're at church from about 8:15 to noon. Other than that, I try to answer my phone if I can. If I can, I don't. But I say during session specifically, things are critical. It's really important to the city or the constituent or whoever it is. So that's how I kind of approach it. Like sometimes I want to tell myself I'm frustrated with a 3-hour drive down and back and down and back and down and back. But every when I'm doing it, I remind myself I beg the people of my district to give this job to me, and I'm grateful for it.
And I'll share the power of a text message, and it doesn't have anything to do with city government, but the power of it. So my first term in the House, I was up. It was about 2 a.m. in the morning, and I was reading bills for committee the next day. And Senator Hester said he was about 800 emails behind. Typically, on any given day during session, I will get somewhere in the neighborhood, give or take, of 300 emails. I'll get somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 to 200 text messages and countless phone calls that go to voicemail, and I'm committed to call those folks back within 24 hours. But it's my first term. It's about the second week of session. Things are really starting to churn. We got bills, and it's 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm up and I'm reading bills to prepare myself for committee. Just a few hours later, and I get a text message. I thought, who in the world's texting me at 2 o'clock in the morning? So I look at the phone, and I recognize the area code and the prefix was from back in my hometown where I grew up. And so I thought, well, this must be somebody that knows me. And so I open up the text, and it says, Brian, I'm so proud of you. I hope you remember me. I'm grateful that you are on the education committee. Whatever you do not mess with my teacher retirement.
That's fantastic. That's absolutely fantastic.
It was my 80-year-old second grade teacher. Yeah, right? And so I say that to say that text message worked because I remember that today. And every time a teacher retirement bill came across the education committee over the last 6 years, I heard her standing on my shoulder saying, "Don't mess up my retirement."
Funny. That's very funny. And you did sign up for the gig. You did ask for it, and I'll periodically at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, there's some heated city council meeting somewhere, and I'll get text messages or a phone call, and Allison's saying, "Really?" And I'm like, "Yeah, these people, they hired me, so I don't care what time it is, I'm gonna answer or try to do the best I can for them." Real quick, and then we'll talk about some other more specific things, but state and local partnerships, collaboration in infrastructure projects. Do you see anything, I mean, obviously water's huge and wastewater treatment's huge. Do you see anything else in that cooperative arrangement, infrastructure-wise, that would be of importance to this group?
Well, we know reoccurring, consistent funding for, just for grants is important to this group. We are talking about that, talking about alternatives. We did some reoccurring, consistent, dependable funding for the highways about 6 years ago. That seems to be working really well. That's a discussion we're having, but it's really, really difficult to agree to take something off the top. Because if you're taking something off the top every year, there could be another crisis that shows up that's more important. So it's not, anyway, it is a discussion that we're having.
Okay. I think that, as you said, water is the new gold. Probably what's close to the new silver, and may have been gold a few years ago, is broadband. And so if you don't have good, high quality, high speed broadband internet effective for your city, you need to be talking to your elected officials, to your legislators. It is a priority with our state right now to make sure that every city has that. Back 2 sessions ago, Senator Hill and I put together a bill to work to allow cities and municipalities to partner with ISPs to be able to provide high-speed internet. The providers kept telling us, we just can't afford to come in and put in the infrastructure. We just can't afford to put in the infrastructure. So there were some barriers to being able to do that, and so we created and changed the law so the cities could partner with these providers. The cities could put the infrastructure in and then lease that back to the ISP providers. It has worked exceptionally well. We've gone in my district to where we had for the people that had service, it was horrible. Now we have, I think, 3 large providers that are competing for all the market share, and because of that, we're seeing continual economic growth because businesses that want to come and locate in your city, they've got to have it.
And Mayor Kincaid spoke very highly of your actions in that regard. It was very helpful for his community, and I think I'm not sure, you may not be aware of this, but it got national attention from a lot of municipal entities, and I got a lot of contact from states and other municipal leagues of saying, how did this work? How'd you get, what happened, et cetera. So very much, very, very helpful. And in that same regard, the State Aid Street program, which you were helpful in getting Mayor Orman appointed, that has also become kind of a consistent model across the country. So do you have any comments on how that whole process worked? She's been a great addition. She's just been appointed to the executive committee too. So she is now officially my boss. She was before, but she's officially my boss now.
Well, look, I think when you have committees like that, it's important for people that are experiencing all different crises. And I don't know anyone, maybe people as much, but anyone dealing with as much of a difficulty and crisis as her. Like you can say, oh, poor Bentonville, right? But if people can't get around and can't move, it is a problem, right? And then when you have to shut down streets, it makes the other ones worse. It's a great problem. We're grateful for the problem, but it is still a problem that never persists, right? I can't figure out how to get to church on Sunday mornings, right? I take this route, and then I take another route, and another route. So anyway, I'm grateful Mayor Orman's there. I knew she was the right person because she's got to have a lot to offer as far as lived experiences.
I'll just say thank you for Mayor Orman and Mayor Kincaid both of you have worked hand in hand with them, and it's a very positive, healthy thing. So let's turn the page. We have about, 12, 13 minutes left. So let's talk about housing issues. You mentioned some concerns during your interview on Roby Brock's show. And I believe you know that clip was played this morning. I think John told you that. So I want to give you a chance to talk about where you're coming from and what message you want us to take from it.
Well, thanks. Look, I've been doing this for quite a while, and what if I say something on a Roby Brock show? I understand what I'm saying, and I understand the implications of that. But I also think that I wouldn't have nearly as many people's ears if I didn't make some statements like that. Here's what I believe. I believe this of the federal government. I believe of the state government. I believe it of the local government. Right? Like we spend so much of our time with our boot on the neck of the developer and the builder, and then we're asking for help because this guy's choking. Right? The answer is just take your boot off their neck. Right? And I am to blame too on a state level. Right? Like I'm looking at over 100 reports right now that we require of state agencies that no one has looked at in years. Right? We require that as a legislature, and I'm going to start working really hard to roll that back. But if this is Martin Luther King weekend, okay? Every single inspection or form that you require, and you may think this is insignificant, but I think you have to look at it as absolutely necessary. This is why. Most cities don't require an inspection for like insulation. I'm just going to use an example. Right? They require inspections for life safety stuff, but some require a lot more, right? But let's just say somebody finishes today on Thursday. They're building a house, an affordable home. They finish the insulation at 4:30. They go to call the city. Well, the city closes at 4:30. So now I can't call in until Friday morning for the inspection. I call in Friday morning, and they almost no one does inspection same day. You're lucky if it's next day. It's usually 2, 3, or 4. But now, so you call in on Friday. You're not getting inspection on Friday. You don't get it on Saturday. You don't get it on Sunday. You don't get it on Monday because it's a holiday. Now, hopefully you get it Tuesday, if not Wednesday. Now, that affordable house that you say you desperately need has set for 6 days. Right? For what? For something that I believe is absolutely not necessary. Right? Most cities get away with not having insulation. Like I've got plenty of complaints about what Bella Vista does, but here's an accolade for them. They allow somebody to send a picture in, and they check off on it, move on. Right? Now, I'm for inspections. Right? Like I'm a builder. I'm for inspections. Right? I think 9 out of 10 times I disagree with them. Right? But the 10th time you're like, oh crap! I'm glad he saw that. Right? So I'm for inspections. I'm for getting the inspection, doing it, finding a way to do it. If you can do them through a picture. If you can do them through allowing a builder to hire an independent inspector, third-party inspector. Look, I've been getting most complaints from Central Arkansas, not even from Northwest. I get plenty from Northwest. But there are cities, maybe the one we're sitting in, that it is standard to wait more than a week for an inspection. That's not acceptable if you say you've got a housing crisis. It's not acceptable. Like, either stop doing the inspection unless it's absolutely critical for life safety, or do the inspection. But you can't have waiting times for inspection and then say, oh, we've got an affordable housing crisis.
Please comment as well. And then I do have a follow-up question to it with regard to state codes, but I don't know if you have any thoughts on this as it relates to the inspection times and the necessity of doing certain things within that inspection. I certainly think creative methods to do them makes a great deal of sense. We have a lot of technology now, and I don't think anybody in the room would disagree with you. Financially, unfortunately, a lot of cities are not well funded, and as a result, they don't have the personnel always available. But that might get us to a point of having an independent contractor that everybody could agree on, or a pool, perhaps, within a certain geographic area. But unfortunately, there are a lot of, it's like water people, there aren't a whole lot of those folks out there. We have to, on the job front, on the workforce front, that needs some attention as well. But that's a different issue. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on just the maturations that go on at a local level.
Well, I think that anything that we can do in today's society to prevent barriers to entry, to prevent barriers to workforce, to take off some of the constraints when it comes to licensing and permitting, to give builders, homeowners, home buyers, home builders, everyone a little bit of an easier process to achieve whatever that dream is that they're doing. I think that's part of liberty, and I think we need to strive towards that. With that said, when I look around my district and I see the growth that's currently happening, when I see the multifamily unit housings that are being built, when I see the neighborhoods that are being built, when I see the residential plots that are being laid out, if we didn't locally have a good process in how we're doing that, I think our builders would go elsewhere. But anywhere you drive now, right, in Cabot, you're not hardly going to go down a street or part of the city and not see some type of progress. And so I think we've streamlined some things through our local governance, and I hope they will continue to find ways to make it as efficient as possible.
So I want to throw into this mix, and you're both aware of this, but just to kind of get everybody on the same page of the hymnal. The state has a 3-code fire code, fire safety, plumbing, and electricity, but then there are several other international codes that the state has adopted and that are dictated that they follow and adopt. So some of the labyrinth that goes through is created, and don't misunderstand me, we need to build safe houses, and when you build things without the right kind of fire breaks and walls, and then people die. So I get the concepts behind it. I would say that some of the things that are being done in the time consumption, those codes are very complicated, which I'm sure both of you know, and you work in the industry. Is there any idea or thought about how those things could be reviewed, maybe streamlined somewhat, and put into an easier to digest format?
Yeah, well, that's a reasonable response. I think that's a good pushback on me, and something we need to look at. It's the first time that's been presented to me. But look, if we are doing something that we need to do better, I'm first. You know what I mean? If it is causing cities difficulty hiring people or keeping people because it's difficult. I mean, I know that you can build in one city and build in a city next to you. Benton or Northwest Arkansas are all basically the same thing. Or it feels like it if you're a builder, and you can be told one thing in one city, and in the afternoon told the opposite in the next city. Those are what frustrate people. We're looking for consistency. So, but no, that's good feedback. I will absolutely look into that. I know this. We're not going to adopt the next building code unless it gets. The last one got through us. It got passed in a way that I didn't agree with, but anyway, it slipped through. The next one will get through without some significant oversight from the legislature.
And I think from their perspective, trying to manage all that while still making sure that potholes get filled and having trouble hiring police officers. And I don't want to bemoan all of the problems, but it's an integrated problem, and it needs to be talked about across the board if we're going to fix it. So,
what I would say on this, I recognize you have a compelling governmental interest to make sure that people aren't burning and that these houses are built reasonably. What I'm saying is, if it can be done with a third party person that meets your standards that you put on an accepted list, do it that way. That guy may come out on a Friday night or a Saturday morning and do an inspection, and building continues to move right along. I'm not saying ignore the compelling governmental interest. I'm saying we can do better on how we accomplish that.
I want to give both of you an opportunity to close out, and we're really just a couple of minutes from 5, and I know you feel very certain both of you have meetings this evening. So before we go, I would like you both to address, and you've done this a little bit, but I'd like you to address what these folks have to do on a daily basis and what you see as a problem in that regard. I know you've expressed some concerns about communication issues between either builders or others with cities. I don't think anybody in this room was elected because of the money. They were elected for the same reason you were, which is you want to make the state better and they want to make their cities better. So I want to give you a chance to wrap up, talk to them about what you see in what they're doing and what you'd like to see.
As I mentioned earlier, the makeup of the House, the number of people that we have serving with my colleagues that have experience either being a mayor or being a city council or some position within city government, we're very blessed to have that experience. And what that does is that gives someone within our body that has a lot of knowledge and experience with what you're doing day to day. And so their ability to share with the rest of the membership is critical. But building that relationship from back home, I know that if I get a call from my mayor, I know that it is an important issue. My mayor takes care of everything day to day with the day-to-day operations of the city of Cabot. And so if I get a call from my mayor, or if I get a contact from our director of economic development, or if I get a call from our director of public works, I know that this has escalated to a problem outside of just what they're going to take care of on a day-to-day basis. And so they know that they can call me 24/7 and working on that relationship. And so working together, we help build great communities, and great communities build great states. And we are very blessed to have, this is an overwhelming crowd here, and being here last night and just seeing. So your participation in this, working together, your continuing education, your camaraderie, your networking, your collaboration, that helps, because it helps that just building and working together, building those relationships, helps us make better decisions that ultimately affect you and your citizens back home.
Hey, I think it takes somebody somewhat humble, at least, to ask people for help. Like if you've got street issues or road issues, have people come in and meet with the mayor. Like, people are usually really good at the mayor. Ask people to come in. What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? How's the process working in the city? Ask. Get feedback from people. Like, I've been doing that a lot, and I haven't enjoyed a lot of the feedback, right? But I feel like it makes me better at what I'm doing. I do know this, like, I'm almost never the smartest guy in the room, but I'm also not the dumbest guy in the room. I'm smart enough to ask for help. I'm smart enough to take advice. I'm smart enough to listen. And other than lobbyists telling me I'm the smartest guy in the room every day, I know this: I don't have a member telling me that. I don't have a constituent telling me that, right? So you just ask. Like, if something's, even if you think it's going well, call community leaders and call people that are stakeholders and ask, how's the system going? How's it working in our city? You'll probably learn something that helps work a lot better. I called a bunch of people into a meeting to talk about sewer in Northwest Arkansas. I called them in and said I want to help, and I thought they were all mad at me. And it's kind of my fault, right? Like, I've been doing this for a long time. We should have solutions to regional sewer in Northwest Arkansas. I'm going to fix it. Do my best to fix it.